A very good morning from the KTN News Center. Thank you for joining us this Sunday morning, the 17th day of September 2017. Exactly a month to October 17th, the day Kenyans are set to go to the ballot to elect their next president on that repeat presidential election. This is Sunday edition. We shall be reviewing the biggest political and governance stories that have been developing this past week and try to make an outlook of what is set to happen this coming week. Well, of course, the big thing that Kenyans will be keeping an eye on is that full judgment by the judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya on the September 1st ruling to invalidate the August 8th, 2017 presidential election. And of course, the campaigns and the intrigues surrounding the run-up to that poll, NASA and Jubilee embroiled in putting pressure on the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to conduct a free and credible election. The IEBC under massive pressure, and now we understand the Electoral Commission could be mulling over a change of that October 17th date. We shall be analyzing all that. But before we do that, let's take you live to a Nairobi hotel where the NASA leader Raila Odinga is holding a press conference. Remember, of course, let's listen into what he's having to say. Let's cross live there.
Why could his profile delete files, that is from 34A and 4B, from the FTP server? Who granted these privileges? And what did Saffron do when they noted this violation? Either they did nothing or aided the violation. Saffron's complicity in this fraud extends beyond just hacking, but willfully allowing gross violations of the IBC ICT user policy. Does Saffron deny that only 2 out of the 40,883 KIMS kids transmitted data for the entire election? Only 2 out of 40,883 did transmit data. This is also in the IBC logs. As a professional firm in the business of conducting elections, aren't they culpable if they stand by as their system is grossly abused with their full knowledge and input? Yet, as things stand today, the firms are preparing for business as usual in a fresh election. Another single-source firm, Al Ghurair Printing and Publishing, whose track record of supplying ballot papers in nearly all elections in Africa, where the will of the people has been manipulated and overthrown, is on standby again, ready to print ballot papers. When the IEBC chairman raised questions with Mr. Chiloba, including why his Chibukati's account was created and used to undertake 9,934 transactions in the IEBC server without his knowledge and consent, why 595 polling stations failed to send any presidential results, while 682 polling stations had identical numbers of rejected votes, we heard from the Deputy President that Chiloba had answered. From the Deputy President. Neither NASA nor the Kenyan public knows that Chiloba had responded. Only Jubilee knows. This is disturbing, but easy to understand. IEBC and Jubilee are partners in crime. The two need each other. If Jubilee is in power, it will protect the co-conspirators and fraudsters in the IEBC. Those IEBC officials have every reason to protect Jubilee as their only source of protection. The murder of Chris Musando, who was IEBC's IT director, is a cold-hearted crime that goes very high up. IEBC and Jubilee are partners in this murder. The question that follows naturally is, why should Kenyans trust these individuals and institutions with another election? Is it because the IBC officials went on a retreat and buried their hatchets? Is it because Saffron supposedly conducted an audit and declared itself clean? Is it because Ezra Chiloba provided the answers and handed them over to Mr. William Ruto? Is it because Al Ghurair has now committed to transparent engagement with the people of Kenya? Are we counting on the very institutions and individuals who participated in a coup against the people of Kenya and tried to install a defeated candidate as a winner to ensure an accountable counting, tallying, transmission, and transparency of results? Our answer is no. IEBC, as currently constituted, together with the institutions that conducted the August elections, cannot conduct a free and fair elections in October. It is not in their interest to do so. And so today, we launch our campaign against any elections held by the IEBC as currently constituted. We shall go around the country sensitizing people about our case against elections by the IEBC. We shall sensitize our people about the reforms that must take place before they can be called to another election. As the opposition, we have instituted reforms to the election process before. We shall do it again. That is our focus and our goal. Because we instituted the use of technology in our elections, we were able to catch the thieves and fraudsters this time. That made Kenya the first country in Africa and the fourth in the world to have a presidential election declared invalid, null and void, due to illegalities and irregularities in the electoral process. We are the people who will end electoral fraud in Africa. We will be the team that will uproot the evil of sham elections with a predetermined outcome. That is our focus in October and beyond, not another sham election. We are alive to the fact that institutions can't reform when they are led by the people opposed to reforms. And so we restate, officers who facilitated the display of figures purporting them to be the results, but which at the Supreme Court hearing were disowned by the Commission as mere statistics, must get out of the way. That is where the reform at the IBC will begin. 1. Abdi Gulie. 2. Molu Boya. 3. Ezra Chiloba. 4. Marijan Hussein Marijan. 5. Betty Nyabuto. 6. James Muhati. 7. Immaculate Kasait. 8. Praxides Torre. 9. Moses Kipkosgei. 10. Sydney Namlungu, in charge of Kisii County, where fake forms were used to declare results. 11. Nancy Kariuki, in charge of Mombasa County, where fake forms were used to declare results. 12. Silas Rotich, in charge of Nakuru County, where fake forms were used to declare results. Kenyans are coming for you. Salvage what you can and run. There will be no election without you, with you in office. This is from NASA principles. Thank you. Kwa mukhtasari wa Kiswahili, sisi kama
The National Super Alliance, NASA principals led by the presidential candidate and leader Raila Odinga there with a statement from NASA. Of course, the summary of it, of course, is making more of their demands and narrowing down on the IEBC, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, and its preparations for the October 17th or for the repeat presidential election. The NASA presidential candidate there listing some names of those IEBC electoral officials that NASA are demanding that they leave the Electoral Commission. Of course, the names are not very new to you, including the name of the CEO of the Secretariat, Ezra Chiloba. NASA demanding that these individuals bungled the election. That is what NASA is saying, and they should not be part and parcel of the repeat presidential election. They also, the NASA principals also did raise issues of some of the companies that are, will be supplying the IEBC with election materials. They did talk about Saffron Morpho, who will be, involved in or will be supplying the IEBC with some of those Kenya Independent Elections Management System, KIEMS kits. Of course, one of those issues that were very big in the presidential petition was the ICT system. They also did mention Al Ghurair, who, and we understand, have a 2-year contract with the IEBC, but NASA is saying they should not be involved in supplying the IEBC with those election materials, that is the ballot papers, as well as other statutory forms that will be used in the presidential poll. Let's get into our conversation this morning. My guests, or some of my guests, are already here with me in studio. I have with me political commentator Anthony Kibagendi. I have with me political risk analyst Dismas Mokua, and the Member of Parliament for Kimilili constituency in the county of Bungoma, Didmas Wekesa Barasa. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. We're also expecting Jared Okello, the Member of Parliament for Nyando, to be joining us a little later in this newscast. Before we get into the political pages, into the press, what the stories making headlines in today's newspapers, Dismas, what can you take out from that press conference by NASA?
Well, really, Mr. Raila has not said anything new. The issues is addressing are around irregularities and illegalities as determined by the Supreme Court. And these are the very issues as to why the election was nullified. And I think merely what he's doing is trying to remind the Kenyans that NASA is not going to go for another election unless we have fundamental changes at IBC. And that would be a valid expectation from both Jubilee and from NASA. And actually, these Mr. Raila's statements should be of more value to Jubilee, because according to the Supreme Court in their determination, the president did not make any mistakes. He is not accused of any errors of commission or omission. The person responsible for the irregularities and illegalities is IBC. So one would have expected that Jubilee should be at the forefront for demanding for fundamental reforms within IBC, so that we don't have another bungled election, so that their win again is not nullified. So it's very disturbing and very worrying that President Kenyatta is happy with the status quo at IBC, and instead it's Mr. Raila Odinga and company who wants fundamental changes and reforms.
All right. Mheshimiwa, NASA, the NASA leaders accused IBC, or Jubilee, your party, as the only ones who are defending the IBC, even though everybody, according to NASA, says that IBC bungled the presidential election. What do you say to that?
If you look at what has been happening within NASA, vis-a-vis the timeline that Kenyans are supposed to go back to the polls to elect the president, it clearly shows that NASA are frustrating the efforts of IEBC to have elections. They are not interested in having elections, because this is not the time of calling for reforms within IEBC. It's the time for asking IEBC either to develop a checklist in compliance with the law, not necessarily waiting for the outcome of the Supreme Court ruling, because it was clear that the elections were declared null and void because the law was not followed to the letter. And the laws are there, the regulations are there. So what they need to do is, when it's like you preach a sermon, then you are told you are quoting wrong verses of the Bible. What you're supposed to do is to hold the Bible and to hold your sermons, and you correct So we should be engaging IEBC in terms of where are we in terms of complying with the various regulations. IEBC should develop a checklist of various sections of the law, or various sections of the regulations that will ensure we have a free and fair presidential repeat elections. And when we are engaging on the basis that how prepared are you in carrying out these elections in compliance with the law.
So there is no time for reforms.
You have no time to carry out reforms. Even if look at the timelines when you want to replace commissioners. And I think it's only fair that Kenyans understand that all those irregularities that were pointed out by the Supreme Court, it's the responsibility of all the IEBC staffs because they were system-based. So a system of an institution, when you are blaming them, you blame collectively, not heaping on a few individuals because their names suggest that where they are coming from, you don't enjoy fanatical support. And those whose names come from the areas that you feel you enjoy fanatical support, you are saying they should remain. I think this is double standard.
Dismas, what do you say to what Mheshimiwa is saying here, that it's not time for reforms now? There's no time for that.
What he's actually describing, in my understanding of basic English, is the reforms. Because if the Supreme Court has made a determination that there were illegalities and there were irregularities, now that's what the IBC commissioners are supposed to establish and make it public, that this is the determination of the High Court, these are the irregularities, these are the illegalities, and how we're supposed to sort them out. And it's very clear that listening to that news conference and the conversations with, within the NASA principles before, nobody is talking about having the commissioners go home because, that will be a moot idea. If you want the commissioners to go home and you want to have elections on the October 17th, that one is, you'll be shooting in the dark. Instead, what they want to do is IBC to do what they're supposed to be doing, creating those systems that everybody can appreciate. These systems are very transparent and anybody can touch it. And, there are so many stakeholders who've given opinions. The observers have given an opinion, religious leaders have given an opinion, Jubilee has given an opinion, and NASA has given an opinion. So what IBC really needs to come out is to create a bipartisan committee made up of Jubilee, NASA, as well as other key stakeholders, so that they can sit and have a conversation and establish, when we went for the elections, which mistakes did we make? What are these errors that we committed? And how do we restructure so that we have a system acceptable to everybody? And IBC shouldn't play to the NASA demands. They shouldn't play to the Jubilee demands. They should play to the cumulative interest of every Kenyan. Because you see, Kenyans are sick and tired every single day you wake up in the morning. Jubilee is accusing IBC of errors of commission and omission. NASA is doing the same. Religious leaders are doing the same. And for majority of the Kenyans, they want to go and cast their ballots, and they want their ballot to count. And after that, they go on with their business. Because, right now, Ben, there's a lot of propaganda. You don't know whether Jubilee is speaking propaganda. You don't know whether NASA is speaking propaganda, the religious leaders, the private sector. But the buck stops with IBC. And IBC... right now, they sit in a very unique position. And one wonders why they're not transparent. Because having this election is a matter of national interest. It's a public organization. Why can't they just come out and give us those systems so that we are happy? Some of the issues Mr. Raila Odinga is raising are of fundamental importance. He says, and it's on record, that Chebukati wrote a memo to Chiloba wanting to know why a password created with his name has been used multiple times. Now, these are some of the issues which should have been answered had IBC complied with the Supreme Court's order of opening up the server. So one wonders, as we see today, who is this who is so powerful at IBC who cannot allow the Supreme Court appointed experts access that server? Is that something, that server, which if it's open to the public, to the world, that Kenya will go up in flames? So these are so many questions we need answers. So
the Commission should live up to its name, independence. Anthony, what is your take on all this?
With all due respect to former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, I feel that the continued demonstration of lack of preparedness for the coming election, they have continually tried to come up with excuses so that they don't go for the elections. Why I'm saying this is because the people they are pointing out don't have to actually get out of IEBC. They can be transferred from that zone to another place or even to the head office. continually demand for their sacking, and they have not been investigated to establish that they were actually involved in misdemeanor, it is a demonstration of lack of preparedness. Like Mheshimiwa said here, what we need at this point is to increase vigilance from either the opposition and even Jubilee. Jubilee are the people who should actually be blaming IEBC, because IEBC made them lose their victory. Right. Because it is IEBC that the court ruled that they did not handle the elections the way it was desired. And I feel that all these sideshows that are aimed at ensuring we do not have elections at the agreed upon date. And what we actually need to do as Kenyans is to understand that these sensational utterances, these unfortunate utterances are not genuine. And if they were genuine, they would be talking about increasing vigilance, not demanding things that cannot happen within the timelines that we have.
So you think NASA are not ready for an election?
Absolutely.
We'll get into that in more detail. Let's take a look at some of the stories making headlines in today's newspapers. This Sunday Standard, page 4 of the Sunday Standard, and that is, of course, the headline. Anxiety mounts as judges retreat to write judgment. This is, of course, the full judgment set to be given by the Supreme Court of Kenya. Attention will be shifting to that this coming week. Of course, that 21-day notice is set to lapse this week. And Dismas, I don't know what you've been hearing from your very informed circles, but it seems like these judgments are not ready. The four judges who voted for the invalidation of the presidential poll are said reportedly that they've never met since that day. What are you hearing?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head that it's reported. There's not one of those 6 judges who's come out in the open and said that we have not met. And I'm not sure whether or not, even if they met, it's a requirement. Everybody's supposed to have an independent opinion when you are judged, because everybody has got the ability to exercise their decisional independence without having to consult anybody. So the good thing would be that we wait for the 21 days for us to see the full judgment. Because the only thing we got from when the Saturn gave a brief judgment was essentially the determination. So we were able to know the determination. Of course, there were so many rulings and the brief judgment. So at the lapse of 21 days is when we'll actually establish whether or not they had a meeting, whether or not they were supposed to have a meeting, and the outcome of the full judgment and the implications. And in my view, the people who are supposed to be nervous today are the key players in the political space, especially IBC. Because in one of their determinations, they said there were irregularities and there were illegalities. Right. So that kind of statement is what makes people at IBC nervous, that a number of them are going to be found having committed electoral offenses. And that judgment is going to be of interest to Mr. Keriako Tobiko, because Keriako Tobiko has said he cannot move on his own motion right now till he sees the judgment. And I think it would be a good idea that Keriako Tobiko, on a receipt of that judgment, within a day or two, he moves with speed and goes to IBC to establish who are these people who may have committed offenses for them to be investigated. Because if you committed an offense at IBC, and all of them underwent several trainings on the electoral offenses, on what they were expected to do, on the do's and don'ts, if they made mistakes, especially if the mistakes were deliberate, then they should face the full force of the law. Because it's simply because of them that this election has been nullified. It's because of them that right now there is so much tension in the nation. It's because of them that the economy is stuck. Right now, when you speak to people who want to invest or people in the business sector, nothing is moving. And we'd like to know, these people who may have committed those errors of omission and commission, which fall under the electoral offenses, were they doing this on their own motion, or did they have a cartel somewhere giving them instructions? It would be very interesting. And I'm hoping that when they go to the judiciary, which has received a lot of flack from Jubilee, they would be able to get fair treatment, fair judgment. Because I recall from the time we attained independence, not a single Kenyan has ever been penalized for a bungled election. You have so many petitions coming up, there are so many offenses, but not a single Kenyan has ever spent time bind bars because of backward election. Maybe this would be a good time in our political history that if you've been appointed by IBC to preside over an election, if you make a mistake, deliberate or otherwise, you are fined for that.
All right. Mheshimiwa, that ruling by the Supreme Court did exonerate President Kenyatta from any wrongdoing in that case, in that row. Do you expect this full judgment to change anything?
I think first, at times I get worried as a Kenyan that some of these confusions are usually brought by people who are really learned and very intelligent. And I meant to think at times that when you are too intelligent, you have doubts in your mind. But when you are an average Kenyan, you exude confidence. If you make a judgment about a matter, like today, if I decide that so and so should not come to this studio, then I will have the reasons at my fingertips. I don't need 21 days to transfer what the reason why I made that decision into a paper within 21 days. And I think we are in a very tricky situation. Because you can imagine even if Kerago Topiko will begin to arrest some people from IEBC, then IEBC will be incapacitated in terms of, even nobody will trust IEBC in terms of presiding over these elections. So we are not going to have this election within the 60 days as prescribed by the Supreme Court. And if you look at the electoral process, to me it's very simple. It doesn't need too much thinking. Because from the person that comes from, decides to leave your house to go to vote, you're being identified with the biometric that yes, indeed you are Benny Kitili, you are given the ballots, you decide if you're going to vote for Raila Odinga or President Uhuru Kenyatta, you tick, then you drop in the ballot box, then when evening comes, the counting is done, the results are declared on some form. So the issues of some forms will affect, you can get real authentic forms. The issue that some officer did not sign those forms, you can get presiding officers and CROs who will ensure that is their duty to sign those declaration forms.
So you don't think we should have another election? You think that we should have had a recount? Is that
we should
what
have
you're
had a
saying?
recount. Because there is nobody who is contesting that what was declared in the particular polling center was altered. And we have also a Court of Appeal ruling that says what is declared at a polling center is final. So to me, it doesn't matter if you will transmit these results through an SMS, if you will transmit through a scanned copy, whether you will put them in a notary or a G4S to be delivered at the National Tallying Center, as long as what was declared at the polling center had not been altered. Because it's only after you've altered it that you will have changed, that will have insulted the intelligence of the Kenyans who went to vote for that particular candidate that they wanted.
All right.
Ben, allow me to buttress the point raised by Honorable Baraza. When you were the Supreme Court, one would have expected that President Kenyatta's lawyer, or indeed IBC, if they were 100% confident that the election was free, fair, and credible, for them to actually, one of the prayers should have been for them to order for the manual recount of those ballot papers. So one wonders why IBC or President Kenyatta's lawyers did not do that. And also in their judgment, the judges said that the elections which was held in a manner that it did not respect the Kenyan constitution. So we don't want to start to get into a situation whereby we go for another election and we repeat the very mistakes. It's important for us to make sure that we clean the system once and for all. Because you may go for another election in October 17th, if actually there is the election taking place, and then now we get into a cycle of going to the Supreme Court for petitions.
All right.
And before you know, it's 2022, and we don't have a president running the nation.
Yeah, there's something important that Dismas said. What we need to know from the judgment is the people who are culpable, the people who are involved in altering results, the people who are involved in all this cooking of figures or interfering with the system. And what we need in this country right now is actually for the Kariako Tobiko to deal ferociously with the people who are involved in electoral fraud, from returning officers to the top. That way, from now going forward, we will never have people trying to interfere or to mess up with elections. Because if we did not have such people, we would not be going back to the elections. Secondly, as Mheshimiwa Baraza said, no one actually contested the figures. NASA was contesting the process. And the court decided that it is IEBC whose processes were, that did not ensure that the processes were properly followed. And I was thinking, it is at that point that, like Dismas said, the lawyers from the Jubilee side and IEBC should have actually demanded for a recount of the votes so that we get to know who actually won, because the figures are not contested.
All right.
Yeah.
Finally, let's take a look at one story here very quickly on page 26 of the Sunday Standard, and that is Hassan Omar bans bridges, but where did it all start? That is, of course, for by the press conference called by the former Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar last week, where he made a scathing attack on his former party boss, Kalonzo Musyoka, and the larger NASA group. Dismas, what is your analysis of this?
You know, politicians in Kenya are very strange people. When you're in a particular political party and all is rosy with your party leader, then you are full of praises. But when the situation is not as good, then you describe them using unsavory terms. Like, for instance, Hassan Omar said the leadership at Wiper was meek, weak, and rudderless. So one wonders how he excludes himself, because before he resigned, he was the Secretary General of the political party. And one would assume that probably he was the second most powerful man within Wiper, only just a step away from Kilonzo. So when he's saying that the leadership at Wiper is weak, he's actually describing himself, because he was a key cog in the political party. And when did he establish that, in fact, the leadership is weak? Did he establish the leadership is weak after he lost his political interest in Mombasa? And if he was very genuine, he would have probably resigned very much early in the day before going for an election. And I think we need to develop a new political culture in Kenya, that if you're unhappy with a particular organization, you're supposed to resign immediately, you take a walk, you form your own political party, or you pursue your interest without throwing mud at anybody. The story of Hassan Omar reminds one of Miguna. After you fall out with Raila Odinga, you start using all the unprintables on him. It also reminds somebody of John Githongo, when he was in charge of corruption. While he's in office, he's a very happy man. But when things go haywire and he leaves office, he's got unprintables for Mwai Kibaki. I think as a political society, we should run away from the culture of deceit. That if you're unhappy with the situation, resign, take a walk. Don't wait for your political fortunes to go south, then you start insulting everybody. Because right now, he says he's not sure whether he's going to the private sector, civil society, or going to Jubilee. If he goes to Jubilee, I don't know whether he's going to be received with a red carpet. Because if you're capable of creating mischief around Wiper, then you can go to Jubilee and do the same thing when things go south.
All right. Much more, what do you think? Is he coming to Jubilee?
I think, contrary to what my friend has said, politicians are very intelligent people. You first do a risk analysis. You look at the pros and cons of the decision that you want to make. Then either if you have some risks, you look at how you can mitigate them or reduce those risks. Then you move forward. I think Hassan Omar did what any other politician would do. In Mombasa, in his backyard, his party, Wiper, was almost playing a second fiddle to ODM in the hierarchy of NASA, or rather God, whatever it exists. And he realized that even in the meeting they have been having, Hassan Joho, who is the key pillar of ODM in Mombasa, and what we can say a right-hand man of Raila Odinga in Mombasa, had been positioning himself at that level, and he knew he has nothing. He has no space to fight within NASA. So the only way to be relevant is to go out of NASA, either as you appear to be a lone ranger, so that you can be quoted by other political parties. Otherwise, if you have continued within NASA ODM, there were plans to finish him politically completely. You remember when they were going for meetings attended by all the principals, and him is being jeered, he's being told to sit down, and the principals are sitting. You know that you are an unwanted man. And in politics, you rather be with the people who celebrate you, even though their chances of winning are smaller, than be with the people who are tolerating you, even if they have bigger chances of winning.
All right. What do you think?
Hassan Omar is an exceptional political talent. whether it's in politics, mainstream, or even in the civil society. What he said about Wiper, for me, is true. The leadership in Wiper is meek. It was rudderless. I've worked with Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka before, and I know what he can do. And Hassan Omar tried to inject a bit of energy, a bit of excitement into that party, but he got to a point where Honorable Kalonzo tried to actually step on him because he prefers to work with people who probably have more money or people who have more say to the person he answers to, who was Raila Amolo Odinga. I'm not saying that Hassan Omar would have won, but I believe if he had a fair playing ground, he would have performed better and he would have stuck with them. And this culture of NASA or ODM or Wiper continuously losing young people from their teams is a demonstration of lack of belief in young people, because if they genuinely wanted to have Hassan Omar within their ranks, they would have spoken to him early enough so that they tell him, hey, you go for Senate, let Joho go for this other seat, and we'll be able to accommodate you in our government. And you need to realize, Hassan Omar, this did not start yesterday. Hassan Omar was the most fierce defender of Raila Amolo Odinga before 2013 elections. But again, he realized that the nominations, he would be played. Right. So he switched. There was Ramadan Kajembe who would get the ODM ticket. He switched to Wiper, which was desperate then. And then now, once he got elected, he decided to try and improve the image of that party, make it more national, but it did not work.
All right, we'll see what...
Can you just allow me to make a point? The politicians are very clever. I would agree with Baraza, because it's not very easy to get up to 50,000 to wake up early in the morning in cold weather, raining conditions to come and vote for you. But when you're going to make a political move, when you're defecting from one political party to another, please do it in peace. Be a gentleman. You do not kiss and tell. If you're in a relationship and it goes south and you get into a divorce, you don't go to the local town hall meeting and start saying all manner of things about your wife or your husband. You take a decision that you are unhappy with Wiper, you hand in your resignation, you go back to your village and you rebuild your fortunes. Because if you kiss and tell in the public space, then you reduce your political premium. Because believe you me right now, there are so many people who would want to do business with Hassan Omar, but they're not sure whether he's going to kiss and tell again.
No. Sorry, I think no, that is not true. Because unless you tell people what happened, you'll be ridiculed, you'll be abused, you'll be disrespected, because you didn't tell people actually what happened. When you leave a political party in this country, you have to give reasons why. And he gave reasons why. Even me, I moved from one political party to Jubilee, and I gave my reasons why. And that issue of not kissing and telling, it is not about kissing and telling that we do.
It's about justice.
Politics is in public.
Yes, I just want to comment something here. My friend Mokwa is a political analyst, and I'm a practicing politician. He may be doing his analysis based on some case scenario studies that happened in America or anywhere whose democracy is really different from what happens in Kenya here. In Kenya, when you are divorcing a particular political party, the only way that you can be allowed, you can be welcomed by another political party if they know that you are completely detached. And the only indicator is to do what Hassan Omar did. And in politics, there is no permanent enemies. You remember the relationship between former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi, when even Raila was calling for Musalia's prosecution with the Golden Bag scandal, saying that he was the one who signed the money. But now they are sitting and dining from the same roof. They are buddies. So in politics, if you want any particular party to take you seriously, you must indicate to them that you have divorced your former wife, your former party, and there is no point of going back. You've engaged a gear of a non-return. And that is what Hassan Omar did. This is the practical scenario, because I'm saying this like I'm a practicing
politician. All right, let's leave it there. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the political path that Hassan Omar will be taking. Is he going to land at the bottom of Jubilee Party, as some people have predicted. We'll wait and see. Let's take a quick commercial break here on the program. When we return, we shall be getting into the political campaigns, the strategies being used by both sides of the political divide, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, and its preparations for the repeat presidential poll, and the challenges it is facing, key among them, whether or not to change that October 17th election date. Let's take a quick commercial break. Here is our sound of the week.
Hauwezi kushtakiwa na tumbiri alafu hakimu akawa nyani ukasema utapata haki. Hatuwezi.